Their eye offset. If you notice in tandem, they're off the tackles. It goes to Johnson, and he's finding daylight as he tiptoes through beautifully. Look at the blockers in front of him all the way down.
Well, hello. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day. Check out this video, and welcome to the Gridiron. Before I get started, I just want to say thank you so much to everyone out there who's been watching my videos. Thank you. If you can maybe give this video a thumbs up or possibly leave a comment below or maybe even share this video, it would mean so much to me. But anyways, thank you so much for just taking time out of your day to check out this video. Thank you. Well, the New York Giants. I did this last year. I think it was kind of around the same time last year. It was like after the mini camps and OTAs or whatever were over, like in June, and before training camp actually started, toward the end of July. I think the rookies got to show up. I think it's July 19th or 20th, and then the veterans have to show up. I think it's by the 27th of July. So, I mean, right now it's the 24th. Yeah, so we got almost 4 weeks before even the rookies got to show up to training camp. So, I mean, there's only so much you can, talk about. I mean, there's nothing going on. There's nothing going on, So, I kind of did this a little bit last year. What I did was I went back to the beginning, 1925. And I went over throughout the month. I guess it was probably pretty much like June and July. I pretty much went over like the first 10 seasons in the history of the New York Giants from 1925, and I left off at 1934. And I said, if something pops up, like I'm just saying, Saquon Barkley gets traded. I'm just throwing stuff out there, or I don't know, whatever. If something newsworthy comes up, then I do a video on it. If I see a nice article or something, I'll do a video on it. Absolutely. But I mean, sometimes there's really nothing going on. So I just started doing this, and I went over the first 10 seasons. All right. So right now we're at the 11th season of the New York Giants, which is the 1935 season. Now back then, I mean, teams are coming and going left and right. I mean, it's not like the way it is nowadays. I mean, you got some teams that are there for a year. Some teams that maybe were there for like half a year. Some teams are there for 2 years. Had a lot of teams back then, like the Cincinnati Reds, right? I mean, they were a baseball team and a football team. Pittsburgh Pirates. We had the Brooklyn Dodgers. I mean, a lot of teams that had not only the names of baseball teams, but the football, At this year, it was probably, in 1935, I'm going to say, it's probably the least amount of teams that they had. There was only 9 teams total. All right, so the division of the Giants were in, there was 5. All right, so I'm going to go over that and all and everything. But back then, I mean, with the Giants, there was some pretty, I don't know if you want to call them glory days. But, I mean, the Giants, darn near almost every year, were either in the championship games back then, or they were battling it out for the championship. Every now and then they had a stinker. I know during the war they had a couple stinker years. Every now and then they had a stinker year here or there. But, they were in the championship game in 1933. They were in the first championship game. Then they were in the championship game in 1934. They won the championship in 1934, and that is 1935. And once again, they were in a championship game. So, I mean, they were in a lot of championship games back then. Didn't necessarily win a lot of them, but they were in a lot of championship games back then. I mean, from the time they started, well, the first championship game was in 1933, okay? So from 33 to 63, they were in a lot of championship games, as I said. Yeah, they didn't win a lot, but they were in a lot of them. So let's take a deep dive, shall we, into the 11th season in the history of the New York Football Giants, which just happens to be the 1935 NFL season. All right, the New York Giants in the 1935 NFL season, the 11th season in the history of the New York Football Giants. All right, the 1935 season, what do we got here? It was the 16th regular season in the history of the National Football League, but the Giants didn't come into existence until 1925. So 25 to 35, this would be their 11th, the Giants' 11th season in the history. The season ended, sadly, with the Detroit Lions' 26-7 victory over the Giants in the NFL championship game. Were if not for the cancellation of Redskins-Eagle game on November 17th due to a heavy snow, all the teams would have played 12 games. I'll show you that in a minute, okay? Which would have made the 1935 the first season in which all NFL teams played the same number of games. Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you what, you look at some of the seasons, and some of the teams back then played like one year was like, I forgot who it was. One team played like 17 games. Another team played like 8 games. Some teams would play like 6 games and fold halfway through the season. It's just unbelievable, the disparity in the amount of games that got played. But not this year. This year was totally different. The standardization of the league schedule was formalized the following year and has continued ever since, with the number of games being slowly increased to 14 by 1961. In 1960, they still played 12 games. 61, they brought it up to 14. And in 1978, they brought it up to 16 games. And then, of course, 17 games in 2021. And when they're going to start playing 18 games, who knows? I'm sure that's coming now. It's all about the Benjamins, guys. It's all it's about. All right, that major rule change. The inbound lines or hash marks introduced 2 years earlier in 1933 were moved closer to the center of the field from 10 yards to 15 yards from the sidelines, or 70 feet apart. This width lasted for 10 seasons through 1944. The hash marks were moved to 20 yards from the sidelines, 40 feet apart in 1945, which lasted for 27 years. Then they were moved to the width of the goalposts, all right, which is 18 and a half feet apart, okay, in 1972. Now, both, kind of both had kind of some interesting races here kind of going on in both. I mean, you got the Eastern Division. You notice the Western Division, there was only 4 teams, and there's only 5 teams in the East now. But you'll notice all the teams are all up over here, right? Packers and Green Bay. You got the Chicago Bears and the Chicago Cardinals, right? The Detroit Lions, the Pittsburgh Pirates, right? I mentioned you got the Pirates. Obviously the Brooklyn Dodgers. That was a baseball team. The Pittsburgh Pirates. The Cincinnati Reds were a team. They were only there for 1 year, I believe. Not this season, but there's just very interesting. The Boston Redskins. The Boston Redskins, 1935 and 1936, they were the Boston Redskins. 1937, they went to Washington. Okay. But you notice here, you got the Philadelphia Eagles, the Brooklyn Dodgers, and then the New York, the Giants played in the Polo Grounds, and the Dodgers played in Brooklyn. But yeah, it's just 9 teams. I mean, you go back some of the others. There's a lot of teams, a lot more teams. All right. In the Eastern Division, the key game took place on Thanksgiving Day at Ebbets Field in Brooklyn. Right, the Brooklyn Dodgers against the New York Giants. And it's Ebbets Field. That's where the Brooklyn Dodgers baseball team played their games, and that's where the Brooklyn Dodgers football team played their games as well, too. As the 5-4 Dodgers hosted the 6-3 Giants. Now, what it says here, okay, is that if Brooklyn would win, they would both be tied at 6-4. Okay, with 2 games left, make things interesting. But the Giants won 21-0 and went on to win their final 2 victories, remaining 2 games to win the Eastern Championship by a comfortable 9-3. So what wound up happening? The Dodgers were 5-4. Okay, they lost to become 5-5, and then they must have tied. And so out of their last 3 games, they lost 2 of them. They tied 1. So they kind of, Then you notice here the Pittsburgh Pirates were 4-8. The Boston Redskins were 2-8-1. And the Philadelphia Eagles are 2-9. That basically they played only 11 games because they had that one game that got canceled because of a snowstorm. But it really wasn't going to matter in the standings anyway. They said then you notice over here, okay, the Lions were 7-3. Okay, they had a better record than the Green Bay Packers. All right. In the Western Division, it basically was. It was pretty close. All four teams were in a close race. On Thanksgiving Day, the Lions beat the Bears 14-2, while the Cardinals won over the Packers 9-7, leaving the Lions at 6-3-2 and the Cardinals at 6-3-1. Very interesting. 3 days later, on December 1st, it was weird. I mean, they play games, days apart, right? I mean, you look back now. I mean, the guys' teams play on Sunday, and then they got to play 4 days later on Thanksgiving. But then they get from Thanksgiving off to the following Sunday off. They get almost a week and a half off. Here, they play Thanksgiving, and then 3 days later, they played another game, right? So on December 1st, the Lions defeated Brooklyn 28-0, while the Cardinals tied the Bears 7-7. With this win, Detroit finished the season at 7-3-2 and eliminated the Packers and the Bears from contention, while the Cardinals stood at 6-3-2 with another game against the Bears coming up on December 8th. The Cardinals needed to win in order to force a playoff for a division title. However, the Bears won 13-0, and the Lions were the division champs. So, had the current post-1972 system of counting ties as half a win and half a loss been in place in 1935, the 8-4 Packers would have tied the 7-3-2 Lions for the Western Division title, with 667 requiring a playoff game. Would have been very, very interesting. So you would have had the Packers and the Lions would have played a playoff game, and whoever would have won that would have played the New York Giants for the championship. Now, if you notice here, I mean, the Giants, right? I mean, Ed Danowski was their leading passer, right? He completed 50% of his passes, 794 yards. He completed 10 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. Okay, but 50% of completing 50% of your passes back then was pretty good, right? You notice, a lot of guys, right? I mean, Kink Richards was the leading rusher with 449 yards, 335, 166, 151, 100. I mean, so a lot of guys running the ball, but I mean, you're not getting guys, this guy had 1,200 yards. No, that's not happening back then, I mean, look, the leading rusher for the Giants was they went to the championship game. Their leading rusher had averaged 2.9 yards per carry. You had a couple guys here 5.3 or 5. But for the most part, then their second leading rusher is 2.6 yards per carry. So, yards came tough back then. I can tell you that much. Let's see here. Oh, here we go. We got the scores here. The Giants didn't do very well at all against the other division. Okay. They were 8-0 against their own division. All right. When they played the other division, right, they were 1-3. So, you'll notice here they beat the Pittsburgh Pirates 42-7. Then they played the Redskins. They won that 20-12. They played the Dodgers. They beat the Dodgers twice. They beat the Redskins twice, 17-6 and 20-12. They beat the Dodgers 10-7. Then they beat the Dodgers again on Thanksgiving Day. Right? They beat the Pirates 13-0. Then they beat them 42-7. Then they beat the Eagles 21-14. Then they beat them 10-0. All right. But you notice when they played the other division, right? Let's see. They lost to the Packers 16-7. They lost to the Cardinals 14-13. They lost to the Bears 20-3. The only time they won, they actually beat in Chicago. They won 3-0 at Wrigley Field. All right. Which would be, let's see here. It's weird because they played back-to-back games against the Bears, who were in the other division. That's like the Giants playing Pittsburgh Steelers 2 times nowadays. It's just weird. But they wound up, they kicked the field goal in the third quarter. Then that was the only score in the whole game, 20-3, in front of whopping 19,000 people. All right. But the Giants, let's say, they didn't, what did they do? They averaged 15 points a game. They scored 180 points. So 15 points a game back then, well, it wasn't too bad, but they only gave up 8 points a game. They were first. They had the best defense. Their offense was 4th out of 9 with 15 points per game. Yeah, I mean, you don't score a lot. Points are definitely at a premium. All their touchdowns, the Giants had all touchdowns all year long. In their 12 games, they scored 23 touchdowns. They gave up only 11. Okay, extra points made. They were 21 out of 23. Okay, field goals made. They made 7. They only gave up 1 field goal all year. That's pretty impressive. They made 7, so they scored 180 points. So, yeah, as I said, points were certainly at a premium. But if we go to this is the history, okay, of the championship games. You'll notice the Giants were in the first 3 championship games. Okay, they lost the first one, 23-21 to the Bears. Probably one of the best championship games ever. Period. But there's like no film on it, or hardly any film, and it was a very, very, very exciting game. Then the second, which was the sneakers game, the Giants beat the Bears 30-13 on a frozen field in New York. A very famous game, one of the most famous weather games ever. Okay, I guess the Ice Bowl is probably the most famous, but I mean the sneaker game would be probably in the top 5 of all time. Okay, and then the third championship game, the Lions, beat the Giants 26-7. All right, so we got 1935 NFL championship game. All right, was the third NFL championship game. It was held on December 15th. So it's weird. It's like now, back then, the championship game was held halfway through December. Now the Super Bowls are played like halfway into February. It just goes to show you how many more games they played now. Okay, they played at the University of Detroit Stadium in Detroit, Michigan. The 1935 champion of the Western Division was the Detroit Lions at 7-3-2, and the champion of the Eastern Division was the Giants at 9-3. The Giants, coached by Steve Owen, were in their 3rd straight title game and were defending champions. While the Lions, coached by George Potsy Clark, were in their 1st title game, 3 years removed from their nail-biting loss in the indoor 1932 playoff game as the Portsmouth Spartans. They were the Portsmouth Spartans, and then they wound up changing over to the Detroit Lions. But you got the game summary here. The weather in Detroit for the game was gray, wet, and windy. I saw there was some video that I saw, and it looked like it might be a little snow coming down as well too. I was in Detroit, and this was men were men back then. They actually played outdoors in Detroit. Yeah, there's no dome stadiums back then, right? They played football. It was outside. And the field was at the University of Detroit's Titan Stadium. It was sloppy. The Lions took the opening kickoff and drove down the field for a touchdown. They were helped by 2 long passing plays, including one from Ace Gutowski that hit Ed Danowski playing defense in the chest. Okay, the Danowski's from the Giants. Hit him in the chest and was caught by the Lions and Ed Klawicki. Gutowski capped a 61-yard drive with a 2-yard touchdown run, and Glenn Presnell kicked the extra point for the 7-0 lead. After the Lions scored another touchdown on a twisting 40-yard run by Dutch Clark, which was set up by a touchdown by interception. The Giants threw an interception, and the Lions got the ball, and then Dutch Clark with a twisting nice touchdown run. Gave Detroit a 13-0 lead, but the Giants cut the lead to 6 by halftime of a long pass from Danowski to Ken Strong. However, 2 touchdowns. There was no scoring in the 3rd quarter, okay? And it was 2 4th-down touchdowns, one by Ernest Wiley Cadell, okay? And the future Lions coach, Buddy Parker, sealed the 26-7 victory and the first NFL championship for the Detroit Lions. All right. So, I mean, all in all, it was a very, very successful season in the history of the Giants. I mean, they went to a 3rd straight championship game. I mean, as I said, pretty much every year they were kind of like in the thick of things. Every now and then they had like a little clunker year here or there, maybe a couple clunkers in a row. But
for the most part, they were always kind of battling it out. And if they didn't make the championship game, they were usually like in second place or so. And they always seemed to have a shot maybe making the championship game. But all in all, they lost the championship game. It is what it is. But the Giants wound up having a record of 9-3, and they made their third straight championship game. So all in all, the 1935 season for the New York Giants was a successful one.
So you see, I mean, it was another exciting season in the history of the New York Giants. Now, the championship game started in 1933. Okay, before that, basically it was they had like one division. Sometimes they would have a lot of teams, but whoever had the best overall winning percentage, not the most wins, or best overall winning percentage, they were the champions. Now, the Giants had the best overall winning percentage in 1927. They were the champions that year. There was no championship game. They were just declared the champions because they had the best overall winning percentage that year. So the NFL championship games didn't start till 1933. Now, 1933 just happened to be, nobody's ever going to really talk about it, or there's really I don't know if there's any much film at all, whatever on it, but 1933 was one of the greatest championship games ever. Okay, as far as offense, I mean, back then, offense. The Bears won 23-21. The Bears got the ball. They were down 21-16. They had to score a touchdown. They got the ball with about 2 minutes to go. They scored a touchdown. I mean, very, very, especially for back then, a very exciting game. And the game-winning touchdown was scored. I can't remember the two gentlemen's name, but one guy caught a pass. Okay, and he was running. He was going to get tackled, and he lateraled it. All right, and the guy caught and ran in like 30 yards or so for a touchdown. A Giant had a chance to tackle him as he was going into the end zone, but he got barreled over and he went into the end zone, and Bears won. But anyway, from 1933 to 1963, okay, there's 31 seasons there. The Giants were in 14 championship games. So basically almost one out of every two championship games the Giants were in back then. They were in 14 out of 31 championships, okay? They only won 3 of them, okay? Yes, they're 3-11, so they didn't fare very well in championship games, but they were in a lot of them. And once again, they were in 1935. They were in the championship once again. They didn't win, but they were in it. Once again, it was another successful season in the history of the New York Football Giants. Well, as always, guys, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to check out this video. You guys stay safe out there and go Giants.